In this presentation, I will give information about my study, which I have done for Academic Integrity Policies course. The name of my study is Investigating Attitudes Toward Plagiarism Among Postgraduate Students. This is the content of my presentation: introduction, literature review, significance and aim of the study, methods. In the method part, research questions, research design, participants, data collection instruments, data collection procedure, and data analysis will be covered. Findings of the study, discussion, limitations, further suggestions, conclusion, and references. So it will be good to start with a comprehensive definition of plagiarism. The definition by Fishman says that plagiarism occurs when someone uses words, ideas, or work products attributable to another identifiable person or source without attributing the work to the source from which it was obtained, in a situation in which there is a legitimate expectation of original authorship in order to obtain some benefit, credit, or gain which need not be monetary. On the postgraduate level, students are expected to have good academic writing skills, publish proper papers, be more careful about issues like academic writing, citation, giving references, and plagiarism. Chima et al. Conducted a research with 60 PhD students on their conceptual awareness about plagiarism, and the results indicated that even though there was a general perception of plagiarism among students, they were not aware of different kinds of it. In this regard, talking about different types of plagiarism will be useful. Reds in India listed some types of plagiarism as word-for-word copying, paraphrasing improperly, referencing incorrectly, intentional or unintentional plagiarism, peer plagiarism, internet plagiarism. And there is also another type of plagiarism known as self-plagiarism, and this was mentioned by Spinac in the study of L'Opéra. There were some better examples about plagiarism in academia, and we have given some examples about this plagiarism cases. Eddie mentioned about 2 German ministers' doctoral theses which turned out to have plagiarism. Ryan and Roberts addressed the plagiarism cases in Australian universities, and according to the results of their study, plagiarism was accepted as something ethical among university students. Zafar Gandhi et al. Conducted a study with 467 MA students from EFL departments of 28 universities in Iran on their perceptions of plagiarism, and there appeared to be high rates of plagiarism among them. There were also some studies about reasons of plagiarism for the university students. Popovac et al. Mentioned the reasons of plagiarism as panic, inadequate knowledge, lack of confidence, easily accessible information, to gain some efficiency, time management problems, lack of academic planning abilities, inadequate sanctions. Another study done by Almeria and Rajmio, the reasons for plagiarism were listed as instructors' reluctant manner toward plagiarism, poor academic writing and research skills, peer pressure, demanded proper papers, easiness of plagiarism. And lastly, Idigbeanos et al. Mentioned that level of training, pressure of completing assignments, inadequate academic writing skills, and insufficient knowledge were the reasons for plagiarism. When we came to the attitudes toward plagiarism among postgraduate or undergraduate students, Orivane and Magnus Evana studied on postgraduates' attitudes toward plagiarism, and the number of participants in their study were 200. They have conducted the study in University of Port Harcourt in Nigeria, and it turned out that most of the participants had positive attitudes toward plagiarism, although the university had strict measurements against it. Another study on postgraduate students and faculty members' attitudes toward plagiarism was conducted by Kersey et al., and it revealed that students had moderate positive and negative attitudes and subjective norms toward plagiarism. The study of Yıldırım and Razı on ELT students' attitudes toward plagiarism and their locus of control, with 8 undergraduate and postgraduate students and 3 lecturers in ELT department, revealed that ELT students mainly had negative attitudes toward plagiarism, which meant that they did not favor it. When we came to coping with plagiarism, defining plagiarism and its scope is very much of importance. Creating a culture of academic integrity in higher education institutions can be the first step for this. Orloven and Magnus Areva stated that orientation programs, academic writing skills courses, dissuasive sanctions, supporting originality in the papers, using text matching or plagiarism detection tools are the ways to avoid plagiarism. On the other hand, Yıldırım and Razı also suggested some ways to cope with plagiarism. These were using text matching softwares, training, easing time burdens of the students, developing good academic writing skills, motivating the students, collaboration between the lecturer and the students, proficiency in the foreign language, and accessibility to academic sources. There has been a limited number of studies on attitudes toward plagiarism among postgraduate ELT students. To this end, this study aimed to fill the gap in the literature by investigating their attitudes toward plagiarism. And for the aim of the study, it is aimed to gain insight about the positive and negative attitudes and subjective norms toward plagiarism among postgraduate ELT students and create awareness on plagiarism on postgraduate level. My research questions were: what are attitudes toward plagiarism among postgraduate ELT students? And what are the subjective norms toward plagiarism among postgraduate ELT students? This was a quantitative research in nature, and descriptive survey design was used in order to gain some knowledge, gain some insight about the topic. The participants of the study were 30 postgraduate students. They were either at MA or PhD level in ELT departments of universities in Turkey, and convenience sampling was used in order to collect data from the participants. Because of time restrictions, convenience sampling was preferred. For the data collection instruments, attitudes toward plagiarism questionnaire, which was developed by Marvinak et al., was used. And the questionnaire has a 3-factor structure, and the participants answered the questions on 5-point Likert type scale. On the scale, 1 meant strongly disagree, 2 disagree, 3 neither agree nor disagree, 4 agree, and 5 meant strongly agree. There were 29 items in the questionnaire, and as I have said, it has a 3-factor structure, and the first factor had 12 items, and they were about identifying positive attitudes towards plagiarism. In the second factor, there were 7 items, and the items were about measuring the negative attitudes toward plagiarism. And the last item had, the last factor, had 10 items, and they were about subjective norms toward plagiarism. The statements in Factor 1 do not regard plagiarism as a misconduct, while the statements in Factor 2 regarded it as a certain way of academic misconduct. And on the other hand, the statements in Factor 3 indicate the participants' normative beliefs and their perceptions of its currency in academia. For the data collection procedure, it started with ethical approval letter from the Ethics Committee of Trakya University. After receiving the approval letter, ATP questionnaire was implemented to postgraduate ELT students via Google Forms. After collecting the data, the Google Forms responses were converted to SPSS 26 program to be analyzed. Descriptive statistics were used for data analysis. And the Cronbach's alpha's values were given by the developer of the survey as according to the factors, and they were respectively for the first factor 0.83, for the second factor 0.79, for the last factor it was 0.85. As a researcher, I also calculated the Cronbach's alpha for each factor, and I found that for the first factor, the Cronbach's alpha was 0.80. For the second factor, it was 0.29. And for the last factor, it was 0.73. And overall Cronbach's alpha was found to be 0.84. And this showed that this questionnaire was highly reliable. The collected data were analyzed by descriptive statistics according to factors of the questionnaire, PAP, MAP, and SNP, for positive attitudes, negative attitudes, and subjective norms toward plagiarism. The table 1 shows us the postgraduate ELT students' positive attitudes toward plagiarism. We can see the mean scores and standard deviation scores of the participants. There were 12 items in the first factor. Table 2 shows us postgraduate ELT students' negative attitudes toward plagiarism, and there were 7 items, and the mean scores and standard deviation scores can be seen like this. And on table 3, postgraduate ELT students' subjective norms toward plagiarism, and there were 10 items in this one. And when we look at our findings for PAP, the statement in the questionnaire, self-plagiarism should not be punishable in the same way as plagiarism is, has a mean score of 3.37. This showed us that the participants agreed with this statement the most. If one cannot write well in a foreign language, that is English, it is justified to copy parts of a similar paper already published in that language, has a mean score of 1.47. That showed us the participants disagreed with this item the most. For the negative attitudes toward plagiarism, the item plagiarizing is as bad as stealing an exam has a mean score of 4.40. The participants agreed with this statement the most. A plagiarized paper does no harm to science has a mean score of 1.47, and we can say that the participants disagreed with this statement the most. For the last factor, subjective norms towards plagiarism, the statement authors say they do not plagiarize when in fact they do has a mean score of 3.27, So it can be said that the participants agreed with these statements the most. On the other hand, the statement that the participants disagreed the most was, I keep plagiarizing because I haven't been caught yet. As we can see, it has a mean score of 1.13. So according to the findings, we can say that the participants did not agree with the positive opinions toward plagiarism. They did not support plagiarism and did not agree with the statements justifying it. The respondents had negative attitudes about plagiarism. However, their indecisiveness about their attitudes toward self-plagiarism may be due to the fact that they did not fully understand the meaning of this concept. Or it can be interpreted as that the participants generally have a superficial knowledge of plagiarism rather than a detailed one. On the other hand, ELT postgraduate students' negative attitudes toward plagiarism were evidenced by their high agreement with the statements which were against plagiarism in the survey. The participants were in the opinion of that plagiarism was wrong and they saw it as an unacceptable issue. And participants did not underestimate the issue of plagiarism and saw it as an important matter to be paid a great deal of attention. In this regard, we can say that the study is in line with the results of study conducted by Yildirim and Raza. As a result of their study with both undergraduate and graduate ELT students, they found that postgraduate students had more negative attitudes toward plagiarism than undergraduate students and found fewer justifications for their positive attitudes toward plagiarism. On the other hand, the present study is in contrast with the results obtained in the study of Oliven and Magnus Areva. They stated that 200 postgraduate students who participated in their study had positive attitudes toward plagiarism. Likewise, in the study conducted by Curti et al., it was concluded that postgraduate students have a moderate attitude toward plagiarism because of the students' lack of clear information about the sanctions for plagiarism. For the limitations of the study, the first limitation was the number of participants, and this affected the reliability issue to some extent. As I have mentioned in data analysis part, Cronbach's alpha value for the factor 2 was calculated as 0.29 by the researcher, although the developer of the survey gave this Cronbach's alpha value for the second factor as 0.79. The low value in that study may be because of the limited number of participants. As a researcher, I didn't have an aim for generalizing the results because it was impossible because of the number of participants. And this was a descriptive survey. And we cannot generalize the results. And participants may have tended to give answers that were widely accepted by others, but I assumed them to give truthful answers for the questionnaire. As a further study, the attitudes of undergraduate ELT students toward plagiarism as well as postgraduate ones can be measured, and the relationship between the two can be examined. In order to gain more detailed information, additional data collection tools such as interviews or examination of students' written assignments can be included in the study. Moreover, the scope of the study can be enlarged with higher numbers of participants. In the study, it was aimed to measure the positive and negative attitudes and subjective norms of the postgraduate ELT students. who were expected to have a certain level of awareness about plagiarism. The results of the research revealed that the participants generally developed a negative attitude toward plagiarism. They did not see it as something acceptable, and they thought that plagiarism was not an issue to be underestimated. However, looking at their attitudes towards self-plagiarism, it was also revealed that they had a relatively moderate attitude. It may have meant that they did not have comprehensive knowledge about the issue. Moreover, it indicated that they did not fully develop the required awareness level on what plagiarism exactly covers. To conclude, strategies should be developed to increase the awareness level of postgraduate students about plagiarism, its types, and possible consequences of committing it. In this way, Bretak also stated that research showed that both undergraduate and postgraduate students needed training to prevent plagiarism. And this training could only be possible with a holistic understanding and if all stakeholders approach the issue with the same awareness and sensitivity in higher education institutions. And this is the end of my presentation. Thanks for listening to me.